Hello everyone, this is Satyaprakash. Welcome to my channel. This is part 39 of ASP.NET Web API. In this video, I'll show you how to call Web API with basic authentication in jQuery AJAX. So this is nothing but how to pass basic authentication credentials to the web services using a jQuery AJAX. So guys, before going through this part 39, please visit my part 38. That is, I'll show you in my playlist, that is ASP.NET Web API tutorial. So in this playlist of my channel, you will get to the part 38, that is how to implement basic authentication and setup in Postman. So before going through this part 39, please visit my part 38 to go through the basic authentication and in a web API and how to set up. So guys, in this video I'll discuss that is how to create a login page using jQuery and Bootstrap and call web API with basic authentication in jQuery and check response with or without basic authentication. So guys, basically in this video I'll show you that is depending on the credentials provided, the web API services should authenticate and return the correct results. So if the username and password used only for female employees, then if you pass the female username and password, so that the female employees should be returned. If the male username and password are used, only the male employees should be returned. So in that password setup already have discussed in my previous video, that is part 38, in the implementation of basic authentication in web API. So guys, here I have the use a few steps. That is, first of all, I will tell you that is create a JS file and to call web API with basic authentication. So guys, here this is my web API project, which I already have discussed through all my web API videos, and also in my part 38 I have discussed using that web API project. Okay, so this web API should be running in the backend. Okay, so I already have it in run mode. So you can see if you go to my browser. So guys, here this is my web API localhost URL. So it is in running mode. Okay, so because without it we cannot consume this web API with basic authentication in my client-side applications. So this web API project should be running, and you can see the localhost, which in this localhost port number I have already implemented the basic authentication in web API, and this URL I need to consume in my client-side application. So as per my step 1, I need to create a JS file to call web API with basic authentication. So here there is one more instances of Visual Studio is opening. So this is nothing but a ASP.NET web applications. Okay, so here in this application I have created one JS file, that is nothing but basic authentication.js. So I need to open this one. So here guys, I discussed this basic authentication JS file step by step. Okay, so first of all, to format a selection, there is one shortcut called Control K, Control F, so that if your code is not in correct format, you can just use this shortcut to correct your format in your JS file. Okay, so I'll discuss this file codes as well for this JS file. So first of all, there is two things. One is username and password. So retrieve the username and password using two text boxes. So what I've done is, on the button click event I have declared two variables. One is username, another one is password. So this is nothing but the text box ID for username, and this is the password ID of password text box. And the document ready function, there is two variables. One is employees, another list employees, and a my table, because this is nothing but this variable I've used for if there is on the response is not correct or invalid credentials passed by the user, so it will display the user, that is the user not authorized. You are not authorized to access the web API, or your past credentials are not correct. And this variable my table, if the response is correct or valid authentication happened, then the data will be loaded in the my table ID. Okay, so this is the work for these two variables. And on the button click event, as I discussed, I have used two variables. One is username and password. And most important thing is on the AJAX. Okay, using in this AJAX I have type is get and the URL is, I have used this web API URL which is in running, right, this one. And this is my web API URL, and this data type is JSON, and the header sections. Okay guys, so if we issue a AJAX request, we need to specify the authorization header. So in this headers, so this is headers I have used. So guys, this headers I have so guys, here if we issue a AJAX request, we need to specify the authorization header. So in the header section, I have one authorization. This is nothing but the basic authentication type, and here you have noticed that here the name header is the authorization. Okay, and remember the value of authorization starts with string basic. Okay, and along with that we pass the base64 encoded username and password using btoa function separated with the colon. Okay, this is the username and password which we have passed for the basic authentication in a web API. Okay, same as we have created in my previous video for username and password. So this is the header section we need to pass for enable our basic authentication in web API, and we can call this in our client-side application. So there is two functions. One is success. If the success function, for success, the function data we have passed, it will empty first. Initially it will be empty your UL employees, that is if there is a response message is not correct, and also it will empty your my table ID as well. Okay, and there is so on complete so on success function we display the full name, gender and salary. Okay, so if their data is successful and valid successful, and my basic authentication is validated, the past username and password, so that my table ID will append the full name, value, gender and salary. So instead of using this first name and last name, I have concatenate both first name and last name and assign to the full name variable, so that it will display the full name as well. Okay, so this is nothing but it will append to the my table and display the records in table column names. Okay, so there is one more function is complete. So on complete callback function, when AJAX request completed with the parameter that is jQuery XML HTTP request, it sort it JQXHR. If the status will be 401 or unsuccessful due to some reason, that is basic authentication is not implemented or username or password not correct, so that what happen is previously shown message will be empty, that assigned by the UL employee ID, and the my table ID also will be empty, and then using the UL employees ID it will append the one error message whatever we have set in our basic authentication web API in my previous video. Okay, it will display in the red color. Okay, so it will display the status code as well as the response text. Okay, and this is nothing but inside the complete callback function. Okay, so yeah, this is all about. And yeah, in the last there is one button clear ID. This is nothing but the idea of a clear button. So there is two button there. One is for button, that is button click on successful one button click is that is submit the username password and display the response, and one is button clear. If it is this ID on click event, if it will click on, then the whatever their UL employee, it will be empty, and the my table ID data will be empty. So this close tag of both the functions. So this is all about the code of basic authentication.js file. Okay, so in my next step is step 2 is create login page with jQuery and Bootstrap. So guys, here So here guys, I have created one HTML file to consume that web API with basic authentication. So this client-side application extension is HTML. So basic authentication.html. So I need to open that. So here I'll show you one step by step. That is, this page is designed with HTML and jQuery code, and here basically this is the HTML and head tag, and this is the title, and inside I have used some reference to my Bootstrap and JS file. Okay, so these three lines, that is jQuery.js, Bootstrap.js and Bootstrap.css, to use some features for jQuery and for Bootstrap to make the page responsive. So this path, nothing but I have this is my set in my local path. It is coming from my local path. Okay, CSS. So inside CSS folder, all my Bootstrap files there, and the same way for JS, all the Bootstrap related files, JavaScript files, and for scripts there is jQuery related files there. And this is nothing but a basic authentication JS, which I have created for implement the basic authentication in web API. We can consume in the web API URL with basic authentication, as I discussed. So this files also we need to use in our script section as well. So in the body section, I have used h1 tag. Okay, and there is some div section. This is nothing but I have used for some classes. So container, this is nothing but for Bootstrap. Okay, and there is one registration form, and it will be class as a form group. And the username, this is one label. Same way for username, I have used one text box, that is username, text username. And same way for password label, and this respective text box is text password. Okay, so this is two text boxes, username and password, and there is two button click event for two buttons. One is button, and it display as face employees, and one is button clear, and this is for clearing the some ID events or text box table ID values, and on another list employees ID value. That's nothing but the UL ID, that is UL employees, and table ID, my table. And for Bootstrap feature, I have used one class table hyphen border. And there is table header, there is few table header, full name, gender and salary, and this is the respective of closing and opening tag of table. And form is closed, and the respective div and body and HTML is closed as well. So this is all about the code for basic authentication HTML. So this all ID, 4 IDs, that is two text box ID, two button IDs, and one another employee ID, and one is table IDs, which I have used in my JS file for getting the to control the values and on-click event of buttons as well, and display the records in my table as well. Okay, so this is all about the code for basic authentication.html. So step 3 is display response with basic authentication, that is valid or invalid credentials. So before continue with the part 3, I'll show first the display response without basic authentication. Okay, so first of all, go to my HTML Bootstrap basic authentication.js file. Okay, and here what I'll do is, so as I told you, I need to display response without basic authentication. So this section is enable our basic authentication of web API. So what I'll do is, I need to comment this code. Okay, I need to comment this code and save these changes, and make sure your web API should be running mode. So my web API is running and I'm getting the response here, right? And I go to my client-side application, and I'll need to run my client-side applications. So here guys, this is my web interface, this is my user interface. Okay, what we have designed using HTML, jQuery and Bootstrap. So two text box, one is username and password, two buttons, face employee clear, and this is the table you can see as the header full name, gender and salary. So first of all, as per my step, I need to show display response without basic authentication. So remember guys, I have commented my basic authentication header section in my JS file. Okay, so here what I'll do, if I'll click on page employee, I'm getting response as you are not authorized user to check the response. So remember, this is 401 unauthorized, and this is the response message which I have set in my previous video if the basic authentication is not set. Okay, so this same message is displaying here, that is you are not authorized user to check the response. So if I'll put my correct username and password, still I'm getting as you are not authorized user to check the response, because I have commented this basic authentication header section. Okay, so that's why I'm getting the response here 401 and this message, this respective message, and there is no display records as well. Okay, so this is all about the part 4. So I need to show us part 3, that is display response with basic authentication, that is valid or invalid credential. So what I'll do is I need to stop debugging, and I need to uncomment, save these changes, and I need to run my application again. So you should refresh your page using F5 from your keyboard. Okay, so first of all I'll show as the valid credentials, and I need to check the response. So you remember in my previous video I have two username and password, that is male and female. Based on male credentials, the male employees will be displayed, and based on female username and password, the female employees will be displayed. So here I have passed as female username and corresponding password. If you click on page employee, so I am getting the response here as who's the employee name with the gender male displayed here, right? So same way, if we pass for female employee, female username password, so I'm getting the employees whose gender is female. Okay, and here if I'll pass the invalid credentials, so you can see 401 status code with message passed username and password for basic auth are not correct. So remember this this message also we have set in my web API using with basic authentication in my previous video. Okay, so the username and password not correct, so that it display message that with 401 status code, that is past username and password are not correct, and as well as this text box values are hidden here, that is it will empty, right? If the message is showing here invalid message will be shown, then the text box details will be hidden or text box values will be empty. So again, if you pass the correct employee credentials page employee, so on click off, that is the previous message that is on another list will be empty, and we can get the details of the valid employee with gender male. It's shown in the tables. Okay, so this is nothing but the table sections here. And we have used a Bootstrap for responsive, so we can check using our inspect element. So see guys, so it is Bootstrap support, so you can see this page is responsive. So if you click on various different devices, so based on that the page is responsive and adjusted to their width and height. Okay, so yeah, this is all about how to call a web API with basic authentication in our client-side application. So you can call your web API any type of client-side applications using React, Angular, .NET Core, MVC, ASP.NET, PHP, and HTML, jQuery. Everywhere you can consume this web API with basic authentication. So go to my presentation. So I already have discussed these 4 points. Okay, and I'll go to my presentation here. So guys, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.